Okay, go ahead now. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us. My name is Kevin. I am one of the school counselors. This is my 5th year at IMSA, and currently in my role, we're really looking to become more data informed. And so my goal, not just through the doc program and continuing my own education, is really for us to use and understand very specifically what the needs of IMSA students are, and then to develop programming and intervention that is as specific to each class of students coming in from year to year. That's really my goal and my focus this year and moving forward, is to work on that level with students and doing community outreach work.
Hi, I am Takesha Reams. I'm the other school counselor. I have been here for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years next month. So my role is to support Kevin in all that research he is doing, because I am not a big research fan, but I support him, and however I can support him and to support the students. So that's kind of my goal, is based off what the data tells, we will form those programs together to help support the students. I will talk in a few minutes a little bit more about the initiatives that I'm focusing on to help our students in a second. So I want to kind of introduce or give a little background on Susie and being a counseling intern, and hopes that if you talk to the students or maybe other parents, you can kind of help spread the word about like what's the difference between me and Kevin versus the counseling intern. So Susie, and she'll talk about it, goes to NIU. She is competent and educated and totally able to work with our students. I know sometimes people get hung up on the word intern, but I explained to the students yesterday that it's kind of, we all had to do it. I had to be an intern, Kevin's had to be an intern, and it's just kind of like your last leg before you graduate. So I'm gonna let her tell you guys about herself. So go ahead, Susie.
Hi, it's so nice to meet all of you, and I appreciate you letting me be a part of this discussion. Like Keisha said, my name is Susie Lee, and I'm a counseling intern for this semester, so I'll be here throughout the entire semester. And I am in the Masters of Counseling program at NIU, so this is my final leg of my master's program. I'll be done in August, hopefully. And so I am, learning about your students and excited to get to know them more. And I have had clinical experience already. What we do in our program is we have a practicum experience where we see clients that were more heavily supervised. And so I did that in the fall. And actually, Kevin was one of my supervisors. So he's watched me in the field. And then now this is my internship experience, so kind of the end of my my education. So I'm very much looking forward to getting to know your students and helping in any way possible. I do have a web page on the IMSA website, so you can find me there. My email address is slee@imsa.edu. Feel free to email me with any questions, even if you just want to know more about me and my experience. And I have some information about me also up on the website that students can look at, and you can look at as well, so you can kind of get to know me a little bit more. So thank you again for having me here. And I'll speak kind of at the end about some tips after Kevin and Keisha give their more robust information.
Awesome. So that's us. In case you need to get in touch with us, you kind of know what areas of interest or the work that we're doing and how to get in touch with us if you need anything. I'll pass it over to Kaylee so that she can talk a little bit about the initiative.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kaylee O'Hare, and I'm a junior. I would just like to briefly talk about the monthly mental health speaker series that I started for the IMSA community, which is entitled IMSA Supported. You may have gotten some emails about my previous IMSA Supported presentations, so I wanted to give you all the opportunity today to offer feedback or suggestions on what I could do to improve the initiative and increase attendance. So I actually began this project last spring, and it was formally approved last June with the original goal of reaching families at home who may have a loved one struggling with a chronic medical diagnosis like my family does. However, Kevin helped me to understand that broadening the scope would result in better attendance and reaching a larger audience in you all as parents. So far, I would say we've had a pretty stellar lineup of speakers. I hosted 2 spinal cord injury survivors that spoke about overcoming adversity in September, a diet and exercise specialist to talk about the mind-body connection in October, and a clinical psychologist to talk about ways to cope with test anxiety and how parents can help their children with that in December. IMSupported also co-hosted the intersession In Their Shoes, unheard stories of reentry and recovery that talked about how creative writing can be used as an outlet for people in addiction recovery programs. I already have my next panelist lined up for February 25th from 5 to 6 p.m. And the topic is teaching meditation and mindfulness in an easy and non-cheesy way to appeal to students and parents alike. And faculty are welcome as well. My program always guarantees that no speaker promotes any product or service, and that all speakers have the simple goal of volunteering for the IMSA community. And I'm here on the Zoom today hoping to gain more insights into what it is parents hear their kids are seeking, or what parents are hoping to see more of. I have the ability to bring in outside professionals at no cost. So I was simply hoping to hear some feedback on what speakers you guys would like to hear outside of inspirational speakers, diet, exercise, anxiety, addiction. I'm just here to listen today, but feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat. And I will also put my email in the chat, so feel free to contact me that way. And I will let Kevin take it from here.
I was not paid to say any of the following information. I just want to make this very clear that the first time that I met Kaylee, she was extremely quiet and a little reserved. And over the past year and a half, the work that she has been doing with this program and putting things together, I think has been fantastic. And so I know that she had talked with Miss Berger about doing this, and then I was instantly drawn to want to collaborate with her. I know that our schedules haven't aligned on the evenings that she's running the program in terms of me being able to attend last semester, but the fact that this semester will be much different in my schedule in the evenings, I want to support and attend as many of these as possible. So if any parents have any feedback for us, please feel free to send it to me, to Kaylee. If you have any suggestions, please reach out to us. We're very open to this and would love to continue it in person next year. So, we can go over the same topics year in and year out because families will cycle in that are new and haven't heard the material. But if you are looking for something specific, please let us know. I also have resources that I would love to contribute and help out with the program if it's something that, that Kaylee is not able to get some type of support around or find people quickly. Are there any, from anyone that's here right now, I guess, is there any feedback not being sent in the chat or anything that you all would like to see with this program?
Hi, this is Robin Abend. I asked a couple of questions in the chat, which was the first one, Kaylee, what year are you?
Yes, I'm a junior currently.
Okay. And are you working with a team of other students sort of to make sure that when you graduate, you're able to pass the torch and keep this program running?
So right now it's just me running the whole show, but I do have hopes of continuing it after I graduate. So next year, hopefully when we're in person, I will be able to enlist some more people that I can, you know, teach how to do everything. But right now, it's basically just me because I know I have a lot of contacts that I'd be able to reach out to. And yeah, but I definitely hope to continue it after I'm gone.
So Kevin and Kaylee, is this now an approved, how shall I say, by student council club or co-curricular so that she can recruit, if you will, people interested in supporting her through the club fair in the fall or what have you?
So it's not a club because I didn't go through the charter process. It's just a project right now. I hope to turn it into an official nonprofit this summer. But I think I'm not entirely sure about how I will go about enlisting others to be on this project, but I think I will be able to email people next year. And then maybe I will end up having just a small space at Club Fair, or I think I would just enlist some people that I knew would be interested. And then from there, I still am figuring out the logistics of how I would get other people on the team.
Well, congratulations. I think it's such a great initiative. And I know that I'm so glad that Kevin and Keisha are there to support you and the rest of the academy. So I'm so glad you're going to be around for the IMSA students for at least another year. That's fantastic. And then my only mental health question is I have a graduating senior. So as my senior is applying to colleges and so forth and preparing to accept those admissions offers, I'm wondering how to explore mental health services available at colleges in the best way, in the most transparent way, without how shall I say, overburdening college counselors, or I just don't know how much of that to bring into the equation when we look into things like that, what things to take into consideration. So I bring that to everyone, you, Kaylee, as well as Kevin and Keisha and Susie. Thank you.
Yeah, so we will kind of discuss the college and being a senior process, but to kind of just like quick off the top of my head, before I worked at IMSA, I worked as a therapist at a college. So what I would say is as soon as possible, if you want to connect your child to mental health resources, like literally the first week, because most colleges only have 3 or 4 therapists for the entire college, and they know which therapists that are in that community that are right outside. And typically, at least from my experience, therapists usually set up shop right around colleges because they know that it's a stressful period for students. And so they build those relationships. Like when I worked at the college, the therapists in the area would literally be knocking on, like banging down our door to work with us. So I would say as soon as possible, have either you or your student contact the counseling department, and then they can kind of help based off your student's need. And like I said, Kevin will go into more detail about this. So I hope that kind of like off the top helped.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, college and the college process tends to be very stressful for our students. Sometimes parents are aware of how stressful it is, and sometimes the students try to keep that away. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing on campus how that's going to translate potentially in the virtual realm, because it will be now the second year in a row that will likely be doing something virtual for students in the second semester throughout. And then what you and other parents can do after you've selected a school, where to go, what to do, because there are a few different options, as Keisha was talking about. So I just wanted to follow up with some of the questions or feedback that was given related to the initiative. What I want to say is, first and foremost, this is Kaylee's baby. So we in no way, shape, or form want her to feel compelled to pass this along to somebody, to give up on it after she's done at IMSA. So what we'll likely do next year is talk about if chartering this as a potential club makes sense. If it doesn't, but it's an initiative that's continued and supported and approved by IMSA after she graduates, and she would still like to, as an alum, run something virtual for us, we can do something like that. If she's still in the area and wants to come and do it in person, we can have conversations. So the goal, I hope, is for us to continue this program and for her to continue to lead it, because it's hers and it's not something that I would want anyone else to take over without her permission and all those pieces. So we'll just be here to support whatever direction she wants to take it, and we'll let you the parents know as much information and be as transparent about the program when we make those decisions. Okay, so the structure, just to kind of give you an idea of what we were looking at. So I am going to pass this over to Keisha. She's going to talk a little bit about some of the current initiatives that we're doing from her end, some of the things that I'll talk about from my end. Then we'll give you some feedback around some things either that were asked in the Google Doc that was sent out to parents, and then some things that we think might be helpful. And then we'll pass it out to you, depending upon how much we have time-wise left, to ask any questions or continue a discussion. And then if you have anything you would like for us to follow up with, to get back to you on that we don't have right now, we can always get back to you during the week with whatever information it is that people are seeking. So I will pass this over to Keisha. She's going to talk a little bit about some of the current initiatives that we're doing on campus.
Thanks, Kevin. So yeah, my biggest initiative is helping IMSA become a trauma responsive school. So the counseling department has partnered up with the Center for Childhood Resilience at Lurie's Children's Hospital of Chicago. And like I said, we have been selected to develop a pilot to become a trauma responsive school. IMSA has developed a committee that includes supporting staff, res life, and faculty, provide a holistic social emotional approach. Our three main goals that we would like to do is that, or we're in the process of doing, is that we are piloting a peer helper program that equips IMSA students with skills to be an additional resource for their peers who have or are experiencing trauma. We know our students, they go to each other all the time, especially for support. So having a program geared towards this can be very beneficial. Our committee will also conduct 4 focus groups with CLED students and historically marginalized students to gain insight into developing a trauma responsive culture at IMSA. And we are also in the process of securing a facilitator to do a school-wide training with the hope that after the training, the participants will be able to create a safe environment, anticipate our students' needs, respond to trauma incidences at school, and recognize and respond to micro and macro aggressions. So that is the biggest thing that I'm doing right now, taking a lead on that. Any questions before I turn it over to Kevin? No? Okay, well, I'll let Kevin talk about his initiatives.
And we're so happy that we had the opportunity to talk with you all this weekend as opposed to last weekend, because some of you are aware we had to talk to the board this week. So we presented a fair amount of this information to them. So we're excited to pass this along to you all as parents, just so that you're aware of the work that we're doing on campus. That things don't stop just because of pandemic life. One of the initiatives that we wanted to focus on, it was a need that we identified, was just overall engagement on campus and education around mental health. So one of the things that we talked about as a collective group last year was what program can we identify that allows us to then go into our community and educate staff about mental health related concerns. So we chose Mental Health First Aid, which is a program that was developed in Australia in the early 2000s. And Mental Health First Aid has not only adapted worldwide, but it is also now for adults and youth. And so I went to their training seminar at the end of last summer, summer 2020, to become a certified instructor for Mental Health First Aid. This was an initiative that was approved by IMSA fully. And so to date, I have run 7 online meetings with various staff members to train them in mental health first aid. And the program is really geared to teach us as individuals working with youth some of the signs, some of the symptoms. It's not intended to have someone become a clinician or to diagnose, but just how to recognize, how to communicate, how to support those that might be in some type of crisis or even non-crisis. Ideally, that's when we're identifying the students within the classroom or around campus if they are struggling in some way early, to intervene, to get them to the resources, to encourage them to talk to people. So the initiative is something that we will continue through this year and the beginning of next academic year. The goal is by the end of 2021 to have everyone trained in mental health first aid, to then continue with the building blocks of the trauma responsive school initiative. So to continue to build on the services and education that our staff receives. Something that's a part of my research and that I wanted to bring is early identification to help students and parents coming into the academy with any at-risk signs or symptoms or potential things that we can assist with as a school. So I put out a pilot this year to run some surveys based off of doing a mental health based screening for our 11th and 12th graders. So that research is something that's a part of my dissertation as well as the initiative at IMSA, and we are working through the data right now to determine programming. What I can provide to you related to that information at a high level so that you're aware is that we did ask some questions about COVID on there. And according to the information that the 11th and 12th graders provided us, there was about 374 respondents from the 2 grades, is that 58% of the students who responded said that they were feeling more symptoms of depression through COVID. 53% said that they were experiencing some increased symptoms around anxiety because of COVID, and 71% of students state that they were experiencing more difficulty staying focused, paying attention, becoming more easily distracted, or just kind of making careless mistakes in their day-to-day life. So I think this is something that will drive some of the initiatives that we're doing in the spring with students, developing some groups that Susie will co-facilitate with students and families who are interested, doing additional work in the community. So I just wanted to pass that feedback along to you, that we do have some information that is guiding this programming. We do have some feedback on what the students are saying that their struggles are. And so I wanted to pass it on to Keisha. she's going to talk a little bit about that motivational piece and the components that we're hearing a lot of students saying that they're struggling with.
Thanks, Kevin. So yeah, like Kevin just mentioned, low motivation is probably one of the top things that I'm hearing that the students are currently struggling with, especially by being back at home, away from, I guess, their IMSA environment. So I kind of just want to go over some tips that will help the students when it comes to low motivation, and then I will also segue into a little bit into resilience. So the first tip when it comes to low motivation is create realistic personal goals and expectations. The student should like recognize that they are enough and that everything doesn't have to be perfect or at that high level, and they need to continue to make progress towards those realistic goals. And making realistic goals can create more of a balance in that lifestyle. The second one that I encourage the students to do is to challenge their inner critique and also challenge those negative thoughts. We don't want the motivation or the low motivation to be the cause of their demise. So it's important to use healthy rewards or positive feedback in order to achieve these goals, rather than allowing their inner voice to wreak havoc on the negative thoughts. Number three, I would say, and I know everybody hears self-care, but it's really important to prioritize self-care and invest in themselves, whether they're reconnecting with something that used to bring them joy, some type of hobby, whether it's coming to myself, Kevin, or Susie to just talk about how they're feeling. But it's extremely important for the self-care, no matter what it is, as long as it's healthy, but we have to make that a priority. The next one is practice saying no. Now, high achieving students, especially IMSA students, are so like they want to do everything, and the reality is you can't do everything. You have, it's okay to say no sometimes. So kind of prioritize what's important and to continue to work on what truly matters, versus trying to like take on everything. Number 5 is to remember to take time off is okay. Like it's easy to look at like relaxing or taking a break as a waste of time when you're in that like mindset, I need to get this all done. But it's very important for the students to take breaks. I strongly encourage students, if they have an off mod, if possible, to take that off mod and step away from the computer, step away from the screen, and then come back to it later versus doing homework. That's a constant like go when they need that break, especially in this time. So like taking that time to relax and recharge your batteries is very important. And to segue into that, number 6 is schedule breaks and recharge. I know with some students, if it's not scheduled, it's not going to happen. So please schedule those breaks, like I said, whether it's your off mod or right after your last mod, take that first hour to just take a break from everything. It's very important. So please encourage your students to make time and schedule those breaks. Number 7 is trust that it will get done. Our students have can get overwhelmed with everything that they have on their plate, but I tell especially the upperclassmen, like, hey, you've been here before and you got through it again. So just let the students know like everything will get done as long as you schedule time to get everything done and to schedule those breaks. And I also remind students that they're not alone. There are a lot of people at IMSA that will support you, that will advocate for you when you feel overwhelmed, whether it's just coming to one of us and saying, hey, I got all this work that I need to get done by Monday. Can you please help? I do that all the time. Like, all right, let's come up with a schedule of how we're going to get all this work done by Monday. The next one is kind of what I just said. Instead of multitasking and feeling overwhelmed, develop an academic schedule of how you can get everything done, because research shows that like multitasking, it sounds good, but it actually has a tendency to waste energy. It decreases efficiency, disrupts memory, and can also increase stress. So those are the big things that that can help our students when it comes to low motivation. Lastly, I just kind of want to briefly go over resilience, because the reality is our students are going through something, we're all going through something that's very hard. And I think it's important to kind of learn how to maybe do our best to overcome or pick ourselves back up or bounce back when they encounter something that's hard. So when it comes to resilience, I recently read in an article, it's made up of 5 pillars, which is self-awareness, mindfulness, self-care, positive relationships, and purpose. I won't, for time, I won't go into all of those things, but just remind your students that, you know, resilience has those 5 components. Like I said, I strongly emphasize with our students the importance of resilience and the importance of bouncing back when something doesn't work out perfectly. One of my phrases that I always tell the students is that you can't keep doing the same thing and expecting something different to happen. So I think as a community, we have to help our students learn that when they get knocked down, whether it's that B or C for the first time, okay, we have to learn new strategies and new skills to help us overcome the first challenging thing that we have, or the 5th challenging thing that we have. So that's kind of just some of my tips based off what I'm seeing with the students. And I will let, oh, any questions? Does somebody have a question?
I was gonna say, it looks like somebody is raising their hand. Herb? Okay.
Okay.
That's
Well, no worries. I'll let Kevin go.
Sure. So I'll cover the question that was both. There were 2 questions, one that was sent to me as well as one that was put in the Google Doc. And a lot of it has to do with potential college pieces. So I'll cover that to begin with and then go into a little bit of the, sort of what the updated current research that's being published is saying around COVID, online learning, and then supporting students. The program that we developed a few years ago is a senior program. And so our senior program is meant for us to work collaboratively with the college counselors to identify students who are in some type of social, emotional, or academic need. And so what we do is we've identified these students, or we start to identify these students in the 2nd semester to have very specific one-on-one follow-ups by the end of the year to talk about, you've identified a college or university that you're going to attend. What type of services around mental health and academic support do you think you'll need? Who are we going to get involved? How can we get you in contact with these people to set up appointments in advance? So this is something that we've been doing the last few years, and we've received positive feedback from the students and the families who have been involved in it. But this year, we haven't had a discussion on if we'll expand that due to COVID to talk to all families and all students, what that will look like. But just know that that program has existed to try to help I guess I'll say students who have kind of self-identified as needing additional support, for us to develop that protocol with them and their families. What I can recommend around the transitional process, at least from a therapeutic and support standpoint, once a university has been identified and you've committed to, your student is going to go there, I would say take a look at some of the resources in the area, take a look at some of the current things that are going on around campus. And as Keisha alluded to, a lot of those counselors, the college counselors, they fill up very quickly. And so getting your name to them early, getting on some type of waiting list or intake list as soon as possible is important. Now, we recognize that families have different financial backgrounds and certain constraints. But if families have some type of insurance program, you can reach out through your insurance provider to get a list of counselors or therapists who are in that area, and then set up an appointment to meet, to work with that person in advance over the summer virtually. Um, and then that transition to working with that person one-on-one when your son, daughter, student goes away to school, they already have that connection and that built into what they're doing on a regular basis. If your student has some additional needs around psychiatry or medication, talking with your mental health provider, whether it's a nurse practitioner or it's a psychiatrist, around how to get those needs met and how to follow up. Those are important discussions to also have and consider. How will your student get medication refills and get those things? Is it something that you will do as a parent and then send to them? Will they have that sent to their local pharmacy and they can pick it up? These are really good conversations to have in advance and start to practice over the summer, related to healthy habits and things around mental health. So those are some of the tips and things that we would recommend to families to consider. And even if your student is not currently struggling, or even if therapy or counseling is not something that they're currently invested in, a lot of our alum who come back state that they tend to seek out services on their own when they're in a college or university setting at some point in time, just because the transition from IMSA, the environment, the learning style, and then going to a university learning community, it can be very challenging or different for them to build social networks, to connect with people. It's just a different experience. And so counseling can be a potential bridge or gap that allows them to talk about or work through some of those social pieces or challenges that they're having. The other question that I had was around kind of the safety of transitioning into a college or university. That's purely based on, I guess, you as a family and your student's decision to commit. I know some families who they have their students going away and they've returned to school on campus last week. I have others that have said that they are taking a gap year. I have others that are just doing virtual or online learning. Others have decided to take a gap year and do community college locally this year instead of going to a 4-year university right away. So there are a lot of options that students and families have around what they feel most comfortable with. But I would say that if there are a lot of concerns around safety, a lot of concerns around health, to definitely have a conversation as a family. And I know there is a potential stigma. I've talked with some students and their families around the idea of a gap year or something like that. Note that we are not in a normal, typical type of year. So making a decision like that for your safety and health and wellness, that's a completely different reason to take a gap year comparative to, some other things that maybe families would typically identify taking a year off or a year away from school would be. So I hope that helps. Again, if that doesn't directly answer a question, just email us, send us an email on how we can help or how we can respond. I like to get back to families as soon as possible, not because I'm extremely diligent as a human, just because I don't want to forget at this point in time in my life. So I have a lot of family members go, you responded to me very quickly. And I'm like, you're welcome. So I guess that's the advantage that you have of someone who doesn't want to forget to respond to emails, is that you'll get a response from me pretty quickly. I'm being cognizant of time because I know that we had scheduled this for about an hour and some of you may have questions, but just wanted to talk about briefly some of the researched things that are coming out around online learning and engagement with students. So things that we're seeing and what you can potentially do to help or support or kind of counteract the challenges of online learning. So the number one thing that I was able to read about related to effective online learning, regardless of whether it was for high school through the university setting, is that students who have consistent access to internet and computers, along with targeted learning objectives from the courses that they're taking. So the combination of those two factors are very important. We realize that some families live in remote areas where they don't have as much access to some of these resources. So IMSA has an equity initiative to support any families who are in need of MiFis, loaner computers, tablets, anything like that. So please don't hesitate to reach out to IMSA and ask for those things if they're in need, because that is probably one of the biggest components that we're finding that can lead to detrimental learning on the online side, is not having access to those pieces. The second one is students having a very intentional plan about how to approach the work and collaborating with teachers, peers, and those in the community. So the best way for students to learn online is to find a way to personalize it. And so typically we would have students who would just go to class and then they would maybe do independent learning, and that worked well for them on campus. That may not work well for them in this environment. So talking more openly with teachers about your needs, asking for additional resources, reaching out to the college counselors around needs and support from them to advocate around the academic component. We have peer tutors, we have a writing center. Also, some families have the financial means to go outside of IMSA and seek out some type of tutoring. And so something that's very important that a lot of families have considered is how to work with your student to develop time management and executive functioning skills if that is a struggle. There are tutors that are out there that can purely help with that. Ms. Keck has helped or tries to help as many of our sophomore students with that coming in through the onboarding process. But if you as a family unit are finding that that's a challenge and you would like to have additional support, just reach out to us. We can pass along a referral network of tutors and they can help to find someone that's very specific to you. Again, if you have the financial means and that's something that is of interest to you. A big thing that we have found is the correlation between chronic absenteeism than grades, poor grades. And not that we think from our side of the spectrum that grades are the most important, but we know that a lot of students and families view that as an important piece to their IMSA identity. And so if you're finding that students are skipping classes and you're struggling to get them engaged, we don't want students to leave IMSA. We don't want you to unenroll your student and have them return to their previous school. If there are things that we can do to help and support, if you're finding that the absenteeism is because it's avoidance based and it's not necessarily depression or something like that, those are different conversations that we can have with you to get you engaged with other community members to help work through that. So please, if you're noticing that from your student, reach out to us. And we have a team. We work as a complete team outside of just our counseling department, where a lot of individuals will become involved to help support you. Related to the senior parents, this is not likely what your child envisioned their high school to be like. So I want you to try to take a step back. Sometimes it's hard to do that and just remember what high school was like, and then something that you really wanted, and then it's not that way anymore, and how that could be potentially affecting the students and applying to college and universities. They're not necessarily taking the same approach to the application process and accepting a lot of the grades from tests that they would normally use to evaluate students. So, just trying to support your child during this application process. And then if they do not receive an acceptance letter somewhere, working with them to just be there to support and trying not to be critical of that, because this can be a difficult time for them and they're not sure how to process that. And so typically they would be on campus and they could go to their peers or they could talk with us as staff, and we may not be as readily available to them in that fashion. So just keeping that in mind, that they will pick up a lot of the vibes that you as a family unit are kind of setting among each other. The last thing I just wanted to just let you know is, if you're less hands-on of a parent, now might be a time to be a little more hands-on in terms of just following up with your child, engaging in conversations. It doesn't have to be related to academic work. I encourage it not to be, but just trying to check in and see how they're doing as a human. The conversations starting with questions of how are you doing or how was school today, it may not elicit the type of interaction or conversation that you're wanting or that provides you with feedback that is helpful. So considering what works for your family dynamic and really starting to open up some more dialogue. I find that a lot of students are reluctant to go and talk to their parents about things, especially parents who are quite intense around the college or grade process, and they don't want to seem as weak or vulnerable. They don't believe that their parents will believe that they're struggling or that they're feeling this way. So these are some of the concerns that I'm hearing from students around reaching out to you as parents or other community members. So I think that it's important for us to try to have as many conversations or discussions to create that space for them to feel comfortable. Even if we don't understand, even if we don't agree with it personally, this is their experience. This is what they're going through. How can we support them through that experience? So, that's kind of what I have to offer in terms of what we're seeing from a research standpoint, combined with what students are telling me, and then some things that I could potentially recommend doing. What I'll do now is pass it along to Susie. She has some things that she would like to present, and then we're happy to follow up with any questions or kind of wrap up our time together today.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So based on that really rich research information and a lot of what Keisha spoke of in terms of breaks being really important, I just have some really practical tips that can be implemented at home. And it takes just a little bit of intention, a little bit of forethought, but this might be really beneficial for students, especially during this environment. So the first one I have is spending family time doing activities that the student really enjoys. And I recommend that they be screen-free activities. I think there's a benefit to doing a puzzle, doing a board game, going for walks, some kind of family activity that the student has indicated interest in as just a bonding experience, and really implementing that breaks are okay. Just kind of making that part of the practice that we can take breaks as a family. That can be really beneficial. And it's also quality time that the student can spend with family, all being at home right now. The next ones are about more of the biological needs. So, trying to maintain and create some healthy nutrition practices as well as sleep. Those things can fall by the wayside when we're incredibly busy. And I think for some of the students who are, go, 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 got to get this done, sometimes healthy nutrition and healthy sleep schedules can become less prevalent and less important. But just trying to maintain that, sitting down, having a healthy, nutritious meal, getting to sleep on time. Like Keisha said, it will get done, your work will get done, but your body will indicate to you when something's off. And so really making sure that those really basic needs are being met can be really important. And then along with that, finding some kind of exercise or movement that the students enjoy. That can be difficult when we're all stuck at home. I know for us, that can be really challenging sometimes, finding something that you can do indoors. But even YouTube videos, Instagram, if students are on Instagram and they follow Self Magazine or different fitness accounts, they sometimes have live workouts that they'll post and then just leave on their page. So even a 20-minute video of some kind of exercise, some kind of movement, if the student enjoys yoga, just kind of maybe even making that a family practice or something that the student can do during a break time, just to get their body moving, and just help them kind of get away from that sitting in front of a computer for a short period of time. And then encouraging them to find ways to socialize. I mean, they're, high school students, this is incredibly important to be able to speak with their friends. So finding ways to socialize, especially with other students at IMSA who are experiencing the same thing they're experiencing, who are going through the same challenges and maybe wanting some of the same things that are difficult to get right now during COVID. It can be difficult for, I think, students to speak on the phone sometimes, or have to sit and do something that's more than texting, but even encouraging doing a FaceTime call or a Zoom chat with your friends, a group, encouraging them to find a group of friends that every Friday at 7 p.m. you guys have a half-hour call. Just trying to find a way for them to get that socialization can be really important. And then on the flip side, disconnecting from social media, which sometimes can be really difficult for anybody to do, but setting app limits. I know Apple has it built into the iPhone where you can set an app limit. So you can make it so that you're only allowed on this app for 1 hour a day, and then it goes blank. So finding ways to maybe set an alarm, set app limits, unplug at designated times. And if you're doing something all as a family, that this is the time we all put our phones in this basket and we're all going to do a puzzle together. We're all going to have dinner without screens. Just trying to find a way that it really makes it normalized that there are times we are not on our phones, can be really beneficial as well. And then along with that, taking screen breaks. Like Keisha said, needing a schedule, like actually having something set in, can be really beneficial. So setting alarms on your phone or on your watch. This is the time that we turn off our screen. So we have it set up so that my alarm just went off, time to close the computer for a little bit, take a little breather, take a walk. Even installing breathing apps, just taking a little break. I know that there's some for the Apple Watch or for the phone where it alerts you, and then you just need to take a break where you just do some deep breathing for a few minutes, and it just helps you kind of get back to yourself for a moment and be back in your body for a moment, which can be beneficial. And then the last one I just had for encouraging artistic expression for students who enjoy expressing themselves that way. That can be such a fun and engaging way for students to express themselves. And so I think finding something that the student likes, if they are artistically inclined, using that as a fun and motivational way for them to express themselves, and being really interested in what they're doing. Tell me about what you're working on, and then having them, show you what they're feeling and thinking through their art might be a really great way to connect. So those were just some practical tips based on the research that I found. So I hope some of those will prove to be useful. I'll turn it back over to Kevin.
Awesome. So the reference to the newsletter, that was something that was sent to us and we talked about as a team. And so the newsletter put that in there in terms of like how to find some type of balance or what that can look like in your life, right? And so how I can tell you from a research standpoint, like what that means to our students. When I ask some of the questions on the survey and I'm looking through the responses, our students across the board say that they work really hard. They believe that they work really hard, that they put a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of effort into the things that they do. They believe that the work that they put out or the outcome of things is so-so. They believe that it is average to below average. So the mindset is that they want to do, and then this idea of the overall product or what they believe or perceive the work that they're doing to be is not at the same level. So I found that very interesting as I was looking through it, because that tells me a little bit about what Keisha was talking about in terms of how we can develop self-concept, self-esteem, resiliency factors. These are important things to remember, that we have students who want to engage and want to work very hard, but hard work doesn't always equate into something that that is meaningful to us. So keeping those things in mind, that pushing students to do work all the time or filling extra time with just work is not going to necessarily produce something that is effective. So I wanted to toss this out to all of you, and if anyone had any particular types of questions for us before we're done today. Otherwise, we'll definitely follow up with anyone that sent us private messages or wanted any information from us. So I'm looking through the questions right now. There was a question about students dropped from IMSA due to online learning. There were a few families who chose to go back to their school due to in-person learning. A lot of them were not in the Chicagoland area. Schools in this area are still either hybrid or doing virtual. I don't know the exact number, but if you follow up with our student affairs department, I think we can get you a better idea of what it was. I don't think it was any double-digit numbers. I suspect that it was single digits of students and families who made that choice to go back to their home school because of the online piece. Some of them were sophomores, some of them were juniors. I don't know of any seniors that made that choice. And then students over the winter break. So during the winter break, it's sort of sparse for 10-month employees. So any of the teachers and certain staff members were on break. And a lot of us were encouraged to take break and stay away from screens and take some downtime with family. During intersession was when a lot of us 10-month employees started to come back. So I'm not really certain how to answer how many students were helped at that point in time by collective staff members, but those were sort of the parameters around student and family support during that break period.
Does anyone have any questions for Kevin, Keisha, or Susie? Okay, I guess I have a question. Kevin, Keisha, and Susie, how can we also as parents best support not only the students, but also to get the word out about the different resources that are available through IMSA for families that may be needing those for their students?
So our hope is to update our website with the help of Susie and some additional resources, so that way we can guide families to the page. Right now, a lot of families have just decided to email us as a team or someone within the student affairs department. That can be an RC that you're working with, that can be potentially a CAC or the nurse, and just asking for certain resources. And then what we do is we collaborate. We talk about who the best person is to be point on that based on the circumstances, and then follow up with that information. So yeah, I would say if it's sort of general resources, to go to our webpage. Our goal is to update that with more information in the spring related to like what to do moving forward by the end of next week. Otherwise, just emailing Keisha, emailing us in the student affairs department. I'm reading a question that was in the chat. Are students who move to local high schools able to return? To my knowledge, and this is not an area of my expertise, to my knowledge, once students unenroll from IMSA and return to their previous school or another school, they are no longer eligible to return. I know many years ago, it was discussed that some students had the option of taking like a week or two where they could go back to their home school and then make a determination. But I think the state put a like squash on that because they didn't want students enrolled at multiple schools at the same time, or attending different schools at the same time. So I think right now, once the commitment is made to unenroll from IMSA, that is a permanent decision that families make.
Are there any other questions for Keisha, Kevin, or Susie? Okay, I guess there's another one in the chat. For you, Kevin.
I guess that would probably be a very specific school question, depending upon what time of the year the students are looking to transition to their old school, what resources. I can say right now, it takes a little bit longer for us to process the paperwork because families have to return information and objects to us before we can officially sign everything off. So it has been a delayed process for us to help families transition. I'm not really certain as to each individual school and what the impact or outcome is for families or students related to that, unfortunately.
Thank you. And then Kevin, Keisha, and Susie, would you be able to share your email addresses in the chat? So if anybody has follow-up questions for you, they could reach out.
Sorry,
Thank you very much.
I didn't do it to everyone. Sorry, I did like a direct message. One
No.
second.
Zoom is kind of crazy that way. I found that I've ended up accidentally doing that as well.
Yeah, I would say that what Kevin said is correct as far as right now, that is the rule that once students decide to withdraw, they are not allowed to come back. But to answer the question, has that been a thought of, has IMSA explored that? Like, can they come back? That is definitely something that they are aware of. It's just currently right now, they haven't changed the rule, but I definitely have heard it from the higher ups that thought has been floating around. Like, will we allow this? Will we not allow this? And if so, what would that look like?
Looks like there was an additional question. So the impact. One of the things that we, at least in the counseling department, have talked with students about is that if you choose to unenroll from IMSA and return to a different school or leave the IMSA community for your learning, like your coursework, it doesn't mean that you have instantly lost all connection or support. To my knowledge, anyone who attends IMSA at any point in time is considered an alum. And so to stay connected with teachers, to do research projects, to talk with friends and keep those connections is still very possible. I know of a student who left a few years back, went back to her home school, and then still stayed very connected to the IMSA community, ended up, going and applying, and I think was able to get into a really great school. So it didn't, from that student perspective, the transition was something that was a positive experience, at least I gathered. But we don't tell students that they cannot continue to participate or come to activities or be a part of the IMSA community once they withdraw or leave the school.
Okay, so I'll just leave it open for maybe a few seconds more if there's any other questions. Yeah, so some of the parents have said, you know, we appreciate you taking the time today to answer questions and share those resources, especially in this distance learning environment, because I know a lot of us parents know that students are more able to and open to just popping into your offices usually when they're on campus. So we appreciate that. And again, if there's anything that you would like us to share with parents, please feel free to pass it along to us too, as you come across. So thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, Susie, and thank you, Kaylee. We really appreciate all of the great information. And thank you to all of you parents for joining us this morning. So I hope everybody has a good rest of the weekend.
Thank you for having
All right,
us.
thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.